General Sterling might want to be a little more careful. Since that is the GSA he's talking to, they could probably have him killed very easily. So something important to note about this episode. After you finish the game, you unlock an infinite ammo cheat, and I will be using that for this episode. So that means we will have infinite railgun ammo. Now, if for some reason this bothers you, don't worry, I will go back to torturing myself next video. The only reason I have infinite ammo turned on for this video is because this video ends in a boss fight that is my least favorite boss fight in the game. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So the GSA are the ones who hired us after all. Which actually makes sense.
Some kind of toxin.
Probably a byproduct of the ignotum refinement process. Find a valve to drain the pool.
Something important to note here, we've never heard the word ignotum before this point, but Velasco acts like we should know what that is. We don't know what that is. Save from the boss fight, this episode was kind of cathartic for me, because I had infinite railgun ammo, and thank God for that.
Pierce, come in.
Receiving.
3 years ago, an IHS research team found a meteorite off the coast of Gondwana. They call it Wormwood, like in the Bible. This meteorite, it had that bacteria, Xenobacillus stellum, which means foreign rod-shaped bacteria from the stars, or XS for short. The extraction process for XS was so difficult and volatile that...
They had to build Ichthys.
Exactly. So this XS, when properly treated, it releases this new element. They call it ignotum, which means unknown. And
that's their high-tech weapons program. A bacteria. Something that you don't have to manufacture. It manufactures itself. And so the GSA is using me to take out a potential threat.
After which, they'll tell Sterling to clean up the mess.
A bullet in my head.
So now you know about this whole bacteria nonsense and where it came from and why it doesn't make any sense. And it makes sense why it doesn't make any sense. So at least there's that. It's also important to note that that was the first time we've actually heard ignotum explained to us. In spite of just a few seconds earlier, Velasco acting like we should know what it was already. This room is a little tough. Not gonna lie. These mines are a huge problem when they're not stupid and running into walls. So the first priority is to kill the drone that generates the mines, but we already did that. Headshots with the railgun do more damage than body shots, but it doesn't really matter too much because the railgun is very strong. So I hope you aren't left wondering where Gondwana fits into all of this, because they don't. Hey look, ammo we don't need because I'm a cheating bastard in the only game where that's an appropriate thing.
Pierce, you take this bacteria, XS, and it excretes this element.
Ignotum?
Yeah, it's a metal, but it's liquid at room temperature like mercury. Thing is, when you treat it properly, it becomes a solid.
Then what?
Run a current through it, and you have a weapon, like the stun gun you found.
The weapons are solid, but hardly earth-shattering technology.
There's no upper limit. You crank up the voltage, and you've got a weapon of mass destruction.
Damn.
Yeah, this is bigger than Sterling or Karun.
Right. Gotta keep it from falling into the wrong hands.
We need more information.
So,
I reached the storage area. Contact. Rail turrets.
rail turrets are an interesting type of enemy. They're turrets, but they move. That's about it. They're more difficult than normal turrets because they can get to you while you're behind cover. But as I was about to say, Pierce suddenly made the transition to a hero in that last cutscene. In case you were wondering where the transition was, there wasn't one. He just suddenly decides he wants to be a hero. This gets even weirder later. They expect you to think of Pierce as a noble person, in spite of him having so little character up until, well, just a few seconds ago. Like, the only thing we heard him talk about to this point is claustrophobia, murder, and sex. At no point does it come up that Pierce might want to be doing the right thing. He seems kind of opposed to doing the right thing in the very first section, in fact. And I don't think this is a case of them changing the character motivation halfway through. I think it's a case of it being apparent to them what the character motivation is, but them not making it very clear to the player. Which is unfortunate, because if we knew earlier that Pierce was a good person, maybe we would've...
I'm down!
As I was saying, if we knew earlier that Pierce was a good person, maybe we would sympathize with him more.
Pierce, expect heavy resistance ahead.
Sounds good.
You don't seem worried.
I'm feeling like a $2 hooker from Kansas City with an unscratched lottery ticket in her purse. Unaccountably optimistic.
That was some really good dialogue right there. It was really, really solid, witty banter. Good stuff.
Gotta shut off that steam. Whoa!
Look for a valve. Chopper drone. Move,
Multiple tangos coming down.
Is there a turret nearby?
So here's another boss fight with the chopper drone. This time it's more difficult because the enemies that aren't the chopper drone actually do a lot of damage to us. So we need to pay attention to them as much as we do the chopper drone. And the chopper actually shoots us back this time, with missiles. It's a tougher boss fight all around, but it's still not that bad, as long as you split your focus evenly enough. Of course, unlike last time, the soldiers do not explode when we blow up the chopper. We have to kill them ourselves. It would have been funny if they did, though. It takes a deceptively long time to kill enemies with the turret. I'm not sure if headshots register while you're using the turret. That might be part of the problem. But yeah, this boss fight wasn't so bad. It wasn't horrendously, painfully difficult, and it wasn't easy or boring either. Unfortunately, the worst boss fight in the game is coming up, so... Something you never really get to see the railgun do is that it can pierce through multiple enemies. Like if an enemy is standing directly behind another one, it will kill them both. But I never really get to show that off.
Heading down to first floor.
We have murdered an insanely large amount of people today. I would go into this whole thing about how psychologically Pierce has to tell himself they're the bad guys to avoid any moral conflict when he fights them, but this game isn't that deep. This part can be kinda tricky depending how many enemies rush at you at the same time. Sometimes all 3 enemies will run at you at once, and you'll die. no matter what you try to do.
I'm in the control room. Crane activated. Moving to the extraction point.
Lieutenant, you're close to the pier, but it looks like they've set up heavy defenses. Be ready for it.
Crap!
Something else. Our spiders have picked up webwork chatter about IHS soldiers attacking an oil rig owned by the GSA.
Huh, sounds like a trap.
Pierce, sensors indicate a large mechanical entity up ahead.
Man, I knew this job was bad news.
Hey, all you gotta do is fight your way out of an enemy facility while avoiding attacks from a gigantic robot controlled by a maniacal AI that wants you dead. Man up!
I'm going to assume that long silent stare at the end was a "why the fuck am I talking to this horrible person" stare. I mean, in universe, this is hell, and for the player, this is hell. So either way, they make light of your suffering. That truck says Gondwana on it. That's not important in any way. I just wanted to point that out. This section right here is really boring and pointless. We're at a point in the game where we shouldn't have encounters like this anymore. This encounter is exactly as difficult as one in the very first location. So, just don't do that.
You got hostiles inbound.
Copy. Fire at will.
First thing you want to do here is, of course, kill the guy in the turret. Enemies don't seem to move toward the turret as rapidly as they normally would for some reason. This battle is also pointless because it's nothing we haven't seen before. The aerial drone makes it slightly more difficult to aim, but there's only one of them. And the amphibious grenadier is not difficult by himself. Not at all.
Copy. Fire at will.
Now this section is actually a bit tougher. Well, not yet. It will be in a second. After we kill these couple guys. Yes, I did skip that cutscene, and that's the only cutscene I'm going to skip in the game. This section can be tough because there's 2 snipers in addition to a whole bunch of enemies on the ground. Thankfully, we have infinite railgun ammo. Now, in this shack next to us, there are a whole ton of weapons, including a sniper rifle. And there's a perch on top of the building where it's easy to shoot down the enemies with the sniper rifle. So you're meant to head into the shack, grab weapons, and then take on this horde of enemies. But that doesn't work. They shoot you dead while you're trying to grab the weapons. The easiest way to tackle this fight is what I'm showing you right here, even if you don't have infinite railgun ammo. Trying to go and get the extra weapons from the shack does not work. Maybe 1 out of every 4 tries you'll actually make it through. Another example of them creating design that they expected the player to use, which is actually inferior to just tackling the situation directly. Up here are some of the few enemies we can actually run behind to trigger an objective. We don't have to fight this guy or the grenadier behind him. We can just run right past them. We don't do that though, because it's still kind of risky, but it is possible. This game is making me feel kind of ill. Like physically sick.
You're close to extraction. Move it!
What is this new devilry?
Checking database. Intel says it's Base-Atan attack drone. Shit, Pierce. You don't have a chance. Get away from it now. Move, move, move!
Welcome to my least favorite boss fight in the game, the Basatan. We can't attack it directly, as Velasco implied. This is the reason I turned on the infinite ammo cheat.
Use your stun gun on the electrical tower.
We need to have the stun gun and the railgun to complete this boss fight, and we need them at full ammunition practically all the time. Now there are ammo crates scattered around that respawn, but it makes this already tedious boss fight take even longer. So what we first need to do is shoot this tower with our stun gun.
Kind of power station.
Right. Now press the button on the transformer to discharge the power.
And then pull this switch. And for some unexplained reason, that makes the boss vulnerable. So we need to pull out a railgun and shoot at its engines. And we do this over and over and over until the boss dies. So unlike last time when I edited out the extremely boring and long boss fight, I'm just going to let you sit here and watch this one. And I'm not going to commentate over the rest of it, so you can get a feel
Press the button on the transformer to discharge the power from
for how dull and poorly thought out it was.
Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engine. Now press the button on the transformer to discharge the power from it. Exactly. Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engine. Now press the button on the transformer to discharge the power from it. Exactly. Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engines. Discharge the power from it. Exactly. Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engine. Now press the button on the transformer to discharge the power from it. Exactly. Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engine. Now press the button on the transformer to discharge the power from it. Exactly. Use your railgun secondary fire on its overheated engines. Bravo Zulu, Lieutenant. That was good work.
Ain't ever gonna look at seafood the same way again, I can tell you that.
The situation on the oil rig, it's for real. Sterling wants you to infiltrate.
Question. Why does the GSA own an oil rig so close to enemy territory?
Was wondering the same thing myself. Keep your eyes open, Pierce. Sterling will brief you en route.